Hey everyone, and welcome back to Trampoline Insight. I'm Steven Gluckstein alongside Nuno Marino, and this is episode 4.
Today, we'll be discussing mental preparation and mental health for competition.
It's necessary that we tell everyone that we're not professionals in this field. We're not psychiatrists. We're not psychologists. All these answers and recommendations that we're going to be giving today are our own opinions and from our own personal experiences. So let's start off with not an easy question, but a simple one at that. Nuno, were you scared or nervous for competitions throughout your career?
Well, let's start by saying that this is really not an easy topic. Okay, this topic is really big, and everyone is different in the way they feel regarding mental preparation and mental health. Okay, but answering your question, I was nervous for a lot of competitions, not all, and some more than others, because I think the degree of the competition really makes an impact in the way you prepare for the competition and how nervous you are for the competition. So I think there were definitely some big competitions like the Olympic Games that were exhausting. Just to rest was exhausting, especially I think I already said this on previous episodes, but for the Olympic Games mainly, I think about a month before, I started having these dreams while I was doing the routine, and I was really, really good, and I would change to higher difficulty skills because it was going so well. So I think that shows the level of nervous that I was for that competition, and then other competitions that not even on the day I felt nervous enough, because in my opinion, for you to compete well, you need to be exactly on that line. You cannot either be too nervous or not nervous enough. You need to be on that place that takes a long time for you to find which place is that for you to be able to compete at 100%. What about you, Steven? How nervous were you at the Olympic Games?
So, surprisingly, at the Olympic Games, I wouldn't say I was as nervous as maybe the days or hours leading up to it. I think I was, well, not I think, I was definitely more nervous competing in the Olympic trials. I think, like you said, it depends on the competition where I was more nervous. I would say I was nervous at almost every single competition, at least some bit. I don't think there's ever a competition, not even maybe my state championships where I was competing by myself. I don't think that I was not nervous at all. Um,
So
the yeah, go
do
ahead.
you feel that the Olympic trials were harder for you?
Yes. So the way the Olympic trials worked in 2012 was the last competition was weighted the heaviest, and I had won the first trial, won the second trial. I was first place going into finals at the last trial, and it was new life finals. So I started from zero, and
Wow.
if I had gotten second place at this competition to either Logan, Jeffrey, or Michael Devine, then I would not have gone to the Olympic Games. So despite going first, and then first going to the final. So needless to say, obviously this is one of the milestones that every athlete works towards, is to compete in the Olympic Games. So um, that was probably the most nervous I've ever been in my entire life, to the point where I actually threw up before the competition,
Wow.
like maybe 30 minutes before the competition. But then once you get on the trampoline, and as you know, and I'm sure a lot of athletes know, it becomes another routine or tunnel vision, or extreme focus, whatever you want to call it. So
I guess I was
go ahead.
never nervous at the point where I threw up. Never that
Yeah,
happened to me.
no, it only happened to me one time, and it was just that one competition. Who kn
Well, I
maybe it
guess
could have been maybe it could have been something I ate, who knows? But I think it's because of my nerves, but, that was the only time that it got that bad.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
so now that we cleared this up, right? I think everyone gets nervous. I think it's a normal thing. I think it's a human thing. I think if you don't get nervous, you're either a robot, or you, aren't passionate enough about what you're doing. Um, so what did you do in competition, specifically, whether it's the day before, or the day of, or 15 minutes before? I guess you can give us kind of a walkthrough from when you arrived to the competition. How nervous were you, and how would you deal with these nerves?
So I think this preparation is something that is not just done on the day of the competition, obviously, right? This preparation comes from all your training, especially in my opinion, the amount of routines that you do, the numbers that you have on the past week, month, 6 months, or even a year, because I think it can depend a lot how your last competition was. It creates a mindset for the next competition, that's for sure. But for me, I was always an athlete that enjoyed doing at least one routine per day. And why was that? To make sure that I could do it at any moment and situation in time. Simple as that. From that point, that was a starting point. From that point, then we did a lot of mock meets in the gym, because it's very important to understand out of a pressure point if you can do it right now. Uh, Fortunately, I had a coach that would play along on the jokes and bets that I would bring every day. We have several stories that training only lasted 10 minutes because I did a routine, and we all went home.
I used to do
So
that
yeah,
for, well, not for that, but I used to bet that for coffee. I used to say,
really.
because we had this amazing coffee shop right next door, and I'm addicted to caffeine and coffee, and we used to bet, or it wasn't just always with routines. Maybe if I beat my time of flight record or something, I would get free coffee. But anyway,
Well, I
continue.
can tell you, I have this story. I have this story that we're all tired. We get into the gym all tired, okay, and none of us really wanted to train that day. And I asked Luis, okay, can we do a bet here? If I do the hardest routine, which at the time was the three triple routine, the 16-2 right now, if I do the 16-2, can I go home? And everyone else, whoa, 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 whoa! If he does the 16-2, can we all go home?
Of
Right?
course, that's how teams are supposed to be, right?
Exactly. United as always. So Luis logically was like, well, he doesn't even. This is not even his main routine yet. He doesn't do it that often. I don't think he'll make it. Not especially with no warm up. We're talking about just going on the tramp and do 16-2. Like, deal. Let's go. Let's do it. So I went on a tramp. I did 16-2, and we all went home. And what lesson do we take from out of that, right? It's just it, our mental game is very powerful. And whenever we are on the top of our mental game, we are very powerful. That I will never forget that lesson, and I think that helped me a lot to compete later in my life. So just for you to see the difference between doing mock meets and not doing mock meets at your gym, for me it was a big impact. When every time we did mock meets and you are successful, it's like a boost inside your confidence, that you're like, whoa, okay, I can definitely do this whenever they ask me. So that's definitely point number two, I think, is you start doing your mock meets at home throughout your period. Of course, you train, you get select some days to do mock meet out of the blue, and you do it. That's what I do with my athletes now. And then personally, I only prepare more on the day of the competition after that. So I had my little routine that I would come in to warm up. I would do similar warm ups all the time. Then the way that I put my tramp shoes and all the superstitions that all the athletes have, and yeah, and the competition routine, using your breathing to activate or relax and calm down whenever you need it, dependent on the situation that you have in front of you, obviously. So, and that was more the way that I competed. And I can safely say that my initial years competing were not very productive. I was not very successful. I was not. I crashed plenty of times, more than plenty. If I would have to look at my, if I would have to analyze my career, I'd probably say that I crashed 70% of the times that I competed, which is a lot.
Wow.
Yes,
Wow.
which is a lot. But fortunately, I prepared myself very well for the last 30. So
Right.
Olympic Games, I did extremely well. World Championships, I did some World Championships extremely well, some extremely bad, and that's part of an athlete's life, I guess. Um, but I feel that towards the end, when I started learning more, I could prepare better. And I think now that what we coaches do, we help these athletes prepare earlier in their career so they can have a career not with 70% failure, but with 70% success and only 30% failure, because there is always some failure in the process, always.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question, because this is something, I didn't realize until after I had retired. But I think I'm an athlete with, mm, I don't want to say much faith, but I wasn't convinced that I was going to succeed all the time. So I had to prove
Mm-hmm.
to myself. And I wonder if you're the same way. So, like the day before the competition, I had to make sure I could do an optional on that trampoline, because I didn't necessarily believe there was 100% chance that I could do it on that trampoline or in that country or at that time. So that's why I did so many routines throughout my career, so that I could make sure for myself that had this routine ready and it was ready to go. Do you feel the same way?
So I had days like that and days that I knew I could do anything, if that makes sense. But some days, and I remember this. I remember this training. I don't remember which stage of my life it was, but it was before the Olympic Games. I know for sure. And I was so tired. I was so tired. I was almost at the end of the training, and I had to do one final optional. And I'm like, if I can do this optional today, for sure I will not miss at the Olympic Games, because I was like really, really down. I was really, really tired. And I finished that optional, and I was like, how can I not finish at the competition when I just did it here, which was extremely, extremely harder, right? So I had some days like that for sure, but I had other days that I thought I could do anything.
Yeah.
For sure. It was like so cocky sometimes that oh yeah, that's easy, I can do that. And then other days that motivation and confidence just go low, 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 and you don't think that you can do anything or that you're worth anything and that no one believes in you. It's
Yeah.
totally.
So was there, let's say it's 10 minutes until you compete at the World Championships or European Championships or Olympic Games, and it's the most nervous you've ever been. What are some things that you've done or said to yourself to not calm yourself down, or maybe hype yourself up, or just what have you done to make sure that you compete to the best of your ability?
So to be honest, at that time I try to just stay busy, because whenever you're busy you don't have time to think about anything else if you start to get too nervous. So I think uh, I can't say it's the moment of most pressure in my life, but it was definitely one moment in my life that I could even breathe of how nervous I was. My diaphragm was like really tight. First World Championships I did. Okay, 1998 double mini lineup. Okay, I don't think I was ever that nervous. Okay, I couldn't even breathe. I was that's that's all that I could breathe was like that. Okay, so it was obviously I was 18 years old, didn't know anything how to prepare myself to that competition except physically. I was training well and I was doing competitive routines, but mentally I was way out of my league mentally. Okay, so I go into the double mini lineup and I was so nervous I couldn't even breathe. So nervous. It was, and obviously I didn't prepare myself well. If it was today, I would have looked at that with a different outcome, right? I would look at that, right? Okay, you're nervous, right? Let's use your breathing. Okay, deeper breaths, expand your diaphragm. Okay, let's let's get this body back rolling as a normal day. Okay, let's keep yourself busy. Okay, let's look at something else. Let's talk with someone. The moment you start talking with someone, you automatically forget all the other things that are around you. Okay, if you find yourself in that situation, for me that's the best advice I can give you. Just start talking with someone. They will see how you are, and they will bring you back to reality most of the time. So it's, if you isolate yourself, it's the worst thing you can do, and that's exactly what I did. I didn't know anyone. So I was on that lineup just waiting and waiting and waiting. And oh my goodness, that was terrible. But right now, let's say I had to compete today. 10 minutes before the competition, I would simply relax, talk with someone, take my mind off of that goal, and start warming up, I guess, on the ground or wherever I need to do. And I always took warm up on the trampoline as a training at home. So I was never very nervous at that point in time. And when you go and you march in, that's usually the moment that everything finally kicks in. And that's what I think, that you need to use your breathing to control you. Okay, you need to faster breaths if you want to activate, or deeper and longer breaths if you want to relax, and just use your breathing. And it's not that easy to just explain how to do your breathing. I work with a psychologist on this, and that's another, we'll get there a little bit later. But after you know how to deal with your body, then your competitions can become a lot easier. There's no doubt about it. And what about you? What did you do to prepare yourself?
So, leading up to or at the competition, like maybe whatever it is, 30 minutes before, 10 minutes before, um, when I would, or maybe even before we march out, I think my mindset would be so nervous to the point where I'm like, I'm so nervous, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to get out there. I don't want to compete. I don't want to take this chance, you know? And so then I would tell myself, you know what? Scratch. You don't have to compete. No one's making you, right? No one's saying that you have to go out there right now. And then like that would lead me to my next thought, which is no, but I want to. And that little change of mindset would lead me from defense to offense.
To
Now
offense.
I want to go out there and I want to do good, and I want that, you know. So just reminding myself that I don't have to, kind of changed my mind. And then before the competition, whether I'm three more athletes to go or if I'm next, same thing. I would find myself talking to my teammates or some of the competitors to kind of get my mind away from it. But I would also go through my routine in slow motion and pick three things from each skill that if I did those three things, that skill went perfect. And I would make these keywords. So I called a mental flow chart. It's kind of like in chronological order. So if I do this on my takeoff of Triff Pike, I do this on my kick out, and I do this on my transition. If I do, this on my takeoff or half Triff Pike, and this, and I do that for each skill, and I'd say, okay, well, I just got to do those three things per skill, and I'm ready to go. And it kind of gave me not only that confidence that I could do it, but it also kind of reminded me of what to do well. So those are two things that helped me. And then if even after that, if I was still so nervous and my heart was racing, I would take 3 deep breaths with my eyes closed. On the first, when I exhale the first time, I would say relax. On the second breath, when I exhale, I would say relax. And on the third one, I would say relaxed and ready. So this way kind of calmed my heart down a little bit from racing, and calmed if I was calmed my shakes if I was really that nervous. But those are the three main things. So outside of competition, going back to training, were you ever afraid in trainings or afraid of a certain skill?
Oh my, I don't even know where to start on that one. Okay, so uh, I I really have this belief that 80%, 85%, maybe even 90% of the world has problems with skills. Okay, I was not an exception. I had problems with skills. So I think one of the biggest mistakes I did was trying to start working on quads. My mind was definitely not ready at the time. So whenever I started working on quads, I started having problems with my trips, and more precisely, half enough out trip. Okay, so I never had a good half trip, but at that point in time, it just created a big problem with what I had on my half trip. So I would not be able to finish the last turn, and I would go to half 3 3/4 several times. And I think, I don't know when that was. I'll be honest. I really don't know when I did that, when it started. But that was for sure 7 to 8 years of my life fighting with that fear, and struggling in training if every single day that was gonna happen or not again. Yes, you get better, you get more confident, but there is always that little residual fear there that is it ever going to happen again? Because when you don't have control of what you're doing, you really can't change anything. You don't have control, simply as that. You're doing something different than what you did when you learned, that now you can't control it. It's as simple as that. So I was very afraid of that for many, many years. So I don't even know. It got to a point that I said to myself, you either quit or you're not going to be afraid anymore. It's it's that simple. And of course, I was afraid of landing bad and being on a wheelchair for the rest of my life. There's no doubt about it, right? That's the fear. That's one of the most fears that a lot of people have. And this is a dangerous sport. That's why we tread so carefully and so lightly on the way we teach things to our athletes, right? And the way that our coaches taught things to us. Uh, and that was definitely my fear. That was definitely the biggest fear I had, and that fear prevented me from competing well many years. I have no doubt about it. Till I really took a decision, and I said, it's time. It's time. You either take this seriously or be done, because we cannot continue training this way. So yes, very afraid for a long time, and then after that, overcoming it, and I got even better results than what I had when I was younger. Yeah,
That's
you?
awesome. Yes. So,
I know you had some problems with skills there too.
yes, for sure. Well, I think I had the one that I think most people have is when I learned double full. I forgot how to do full, or not that I forgot, but I was doing double full instead. But that maybe took a week, and then I had a hard time learning full branny. To finish the full and duck under was difficult for me. Um, I was rushing the twist, and it was hard to stretch, but then quick full turn and then pike.
Yeah.
So, which I don't think is uncommon, but the probably the worst out of all the skills that I was learning was 1.5 Brenny pike. I learned full and full out straight, and to go 1.5 Brenny pike was completely foreign to me. And just to do the back 1.5, I think was okay. But if I tried to go to stomach or duck under, it's like everything I ever learned about that skill went out the window. So, and I remember when I was in St. Petersburg one time training with my coach's coach, Bakina,
Hmm.
Tatiana's coach when she was growing up in St. Petersburg, Russia. And it was at the end of training, or maybe when training was over, and Tatiana and Bakina were talking, and Tatiana was telling Bakina that I was having some troubles with the skill, and she's like, "No, he'll do it now." And I was like, "Okay." And at this point, I had ducked under a few times after doing the 1.5, and I think it was her husband. I'm not sure if it's her husband or one of the other coaches in the gym. Um, Regardless, he was a coach in the gym. Pops up onto the frame of the trampoline. Mind you, I'm like 17 years old, I think, or maybe around there. And I'm
Should
like,
have catch it.
what's he doing? All right, I grew up without a hand spot. We did progressions. Sometimes we had a double mini into a pit, very rarely. Um, but I never had anyone catching me, right? And so now that I'm 17 years old, I'm like, dude, I'm gonna hurt the both of us if you're standing there. Like, just throw the mat. It's okay. And I must have tried somewhere between 6 and 10 times, and I never did the full. I did full and back out. I did Miller, which I had already known how to do Miller. I had already known Miller.
Oh wow.
I
Okay.
did full and Rudy out backwards. I did full and a quarter to side flip. I did all of the combinations, but never the actual skill. The And then I think one of the things looking back on my career that I was not super nervous, but very hesitant about, was to find the 0 degree takeoff, to be perfectly straight up and down. I was always a little bit reserved, just landing maybe on my toes a little bit more than I should have, because I was always nervous that either I was going to go straight up with no speed, or I was going to stick my butt back and travel backwards and then still have no speed and travel backwards. So um, those were some of the things that I was afraid of in training. So some of the ways that I got through these skills or reservations or hesitations, number one is I had some friends outside of trampoline that we never talked about trampoline. So it kind of like got my mind away from it, because if I didn't have that, I would come home and think, why am I not being able to do the
more and
skill?
more.
Why am I, what should I be doing better? So that helped a lot. And then also, when I was in a business class in college, I saw this video, and it said, watch how many dancers go into this box on the stage. I'm like, okay. And so there's a bunch of break dancers, and like one jumps in, one jumps out, and then they start like shuffling through, and it's like pretty hard to count. And then I see, um, then I'm counting, and they say, okay, how many did you count? And I was like, I think it was 12. And they're like, if you guessed 12, you're right. I'm like, sweet. And they're like, how many penguins did you count? And I'm like, no, I was counting dancers in a box. And they said there were 3 penguins. And I'm like, no, there was no penguins. It was dancers jumping into a box. They said, okay, let's go back and rewind. And sure enough, in the background, there was three giant penguins bigger than the dancers. So the moral of the story is your brain can only focus on one thing at a time. And so basically, this is like I call it the flashlight theory. So imagine you're in a pitch black room. You can only see what you're shining your flashlight on. And the same thing with your brain. You can only think about one thing, what you're shining your flashlight on. Now, that could be, I might get hurt. I might get lost. I might do my Arabian 3 and 3 skill, again. But it might be, okay, I need to reach up. I need to do this. I need to do that. And the good news is that we're in control of our flashlight. And I didn't realize that until later on. It's like you can't control these thoughts in your head, but you can control the flashlight. So that thought might pop up, but you can control, nope, turn the flashlight away and shine your flashlight on. No, I can do this, positive self-talk and all of those things that you need to do. And so the more you get into these situations where you're nervous, and the more you manage your flashlight and pull your flashlight to the thoughts that you want to think about, the stronger your mind gets, just like a muscle. And so I wish I had learned that when I was younger, and I think that's kind of the same thing we were talking about when we were getting ready to compete. So instead of thinking about how nervous we are, we pulled our flashlight away from that and then
Yep.
into the conversation with our teammates and our competitors. So those are some of the ways that I dealt with it.
So let me grab something that you said there. I thought it was interesting. So when you went to Russia and you were hand spotted, right? And you said I was never hand spotted in my life. I see a lot of coaches that do not hand spot. So I was I came from a system that we always hand spot most of the time, and I was hand spotted throughout all my career. Maybe not when I was already 20 something years old learning a full pike, because I learned the full pike after I learned everything else. Because when I was competing, full pike was not very
Right.
used, was not the skill like that it is today that everyone uses, right? So I had to learn that past all the other skills. So it was a little bit harder for me to acquire that skill. It took me a long time. And at that point in time, I was not hand spot, but I was hand spotted throughout the whole process. So I hand spot my kids as well. And I feel and I felt whenever I, I had someone by the tramp, even if I knew that they were not big enough anymore to help me, but I knew that they could, push my head at that point in time that could be necessary for me not to land on my head and just give me that little bit of a turnaround. I always felt that would be possible, and that's always like a little boost for you to be able to focus your flashlight on the right thing, because you know that someone else can be there and help you in case something does not go right. So for me, that's the hand spotting defined. That's what I do it with my kids. I help them through all the progressions that they need. I hand spot the final skill, and then I get out of that trap at the moment I see that they can do it by themselves. But I feel that that's a point that many coaches do it differently. We can only express the way that we felt, and or the way that it was done with us and that we do right now, right? So that's point number one. And then just one other thing, I was never very talented to acquire skills, especially in the beginning. Back full was really hard for me to acquire, really hard for me to acquire. 1 3/4 was probably the hardest skill for me to acquire. It took me
I
a
don't think you're
long
alone on
time.
that one. I think that's
Yes,
normal.
1 3/4 is extremely hard, and I see a lot of people with a lot of problems do 1 3/4. But in my time, we would not do half faults before we do 1 3/4 for any ball out. Okay, that's and I believe there's still many coaches that do it that way, which they do it the way they want. We're not here to teach anyone how to teach skills. I don't do it like that anymore. But in my time, it was like that. So it took me a long time to do 1 3/4 and a long time to do half up. So I believe I did my first half up when I was 14 years old. I don't even remember anymore, but 14 and 15, which right now athletes do a half up at 9 years old and 10 years old if needed be, or even before that, some of them. So it's a big difference. And the way we teach is very different than the way we were taught in certain aspects, especially on skills. But yeah, so that's a good thing. But I'm curious about one thing, Steven. So you overcome those things with the flashlight, but not all the time it's easy to point the flashlight. So I feel like one of the things that we can focus is just listening on what your coach is telling you and try to point the flashlight to what he's saying. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. Nothing in this sport is easy. But if you grab the little tips that your coach is giving you, then you can disperse the light from the negative side and going into the little things that he's telling you. It's the same thing that you just said with the routine, that you had certain points about the skills, like the script of the routine, right? I had it for certain skills, and it would change depending on how I was practicing. So if I was practicing good, I probably had 1 or 2 skills that I had to focus on, little things. The rest was kind of automatic. But if I was not jumping very good, if I was not in top shape, then I had a lot of skills that I had to focus a lot more: takeoffs, holding positions, and all those things, and speed and everything. And I feel like learning the skills and when you're afraid is the same thing. Is focus on that little tips and that script for that routine, so you can point the flashlight to the right place. So I
Yeah.
think that's definitely.
And I think that's a very, very good and very important piece right there, is that that's exactly right. You, the athlete, have the control of the flashlight, but that flashlight absolutely should be shined on what your coach just told you, and your trust should be in your coach. And I think that's a huge piece that it is not necessarily missing, but is might be why some athletes have nervousness. They don't want to disappoint their coach, or they don't want to do something wrong for their coach, when actually, like, they're there together as a team. And uh and a lot of times that's what the coach wants, is to be a team, and a lot of times the athletes won't communicate well enough with the coach, and then they just don't want to disappoint them, and then it just becomes trickier.
So
So
so I wanted to ask you, I wanted to ask you something, because we kind of moved on a little bit from the nervous of the competitions to the training, but I wanted to ask you one little detail about the competitions. So when you're nervous about the competition, what were you nervous about at the competition? Well, because I can tell you my point of view, especially Olympic Games, okay, which is the biggest competition, and in the end you have one person of each country, or two if you have strong countries. But I was the only Portuguese in the competition, and the only one Portuguese ever at that point in time in the competition. And my only problem, my only fear was to disappoint the country. My only fear was to disappoint the country. I felt like I had the weight of the entire country on my shoulders, and that was the only thing. I couldn't care if I would get hurt. I couldn't care if I would do. I didn't want to do bad, so I would not disappoint the country that saw and had like this target of what I could do for the sport, and I did not want to disappoint them and the coaches and everyone. What was, when you're afraid? What were you afraid?
I think it was the same thing, and it doesn't matter, or it didn't. There was always the same thing at different competitions. I didn't want to disappoint someone. I didn't want to disappoint my coach at some of the other competitions, at a World Cup. I didn't want to disappoint my teammates if it's at World Championships, trying to make the team final. And at the Olympic Games, the same thing. I was the only male competitor for the United States. I didn't want to disappoint, my country. And lo and behold, find out that I couldn't disappoint my country. Even after I had made a mistake, I was walking away out of the arena with my head down, and the people were yelling, "We love you, USA! Way to go, Jersey boy!" And mind you, I'm like thinking I just let all these people down, and they were happy to be a part of the Olympic Games with me. that they had
So
someone to
I
represent.
think that's something that the listeners, and I bet we start having a lot of athletes that will listen to us. I think that's something that they can all understand, especially your coaches. I don't think that you'll ever disappoint your coaches. Okay, not by crashing in the competition. At least with me, if I ever get disappointed with my athletes because they don't train right, okay, because they don't give 100% in training and they don't commit, they don't come every day that they should. If you do that, yes, then you disappoint me. But if you train well, if you come to every practice, you do everything that it's asked of you, and sometimes more, no matter if you crash or if you finish good on a competition, it's going to disappoint me. It's not. That is not going to change the way I look at an athlete because of that. Because there's so many other factors that influence the competition that does not define you as a person. That does not define who you are when with what you do on that moment. I know a lot of people think that it does, but it does not. And that the same thing for me. What defines who you are is how you behave as an individual on a day to day. You know, you go to practice, you train correctly, you are not lazy, you do what's requested of you, you even do more sometimes than what's requested of you, and that's what defines you as a person for me. And for me to be disappointed of an athlete, it's if you don't do those things, not by what happened in competition. Competition should be your point, your moment for you to focus on the thing that you enjoy and compete. Not I did the same thing. I did not want to disappoint people, but now after all these years and seeing exactly and realizing exactly what you just said, that it would not be possible to disappoint them. They would not be disappointed in me no matter what I did at that point in time in that competition. I cannot emphasize more. It's not the competition that will disappoint the coach, at least in my opinion. It's the way that you behave in training.
Absolutely. And I the way I teach at least some of my younger athletes or early elite athletes is to become a champion. And they know that a champion is not the person necessarily that's standing on the top of the podium. Well, it can be, but it's not necessarily that person. A champion is someone who is being respectful, looking at the coach in the eyes, saying hello, saying goodbye to the coach, thanking the coach, helping their teammates, working their hardest, being a good example, and not just in the gym, but at home. Are they respectful to their parents? Are they helping with chores? Are they trying to be the best in the class? Are they getting their homework done to the best of their ability? Or are they just getting through it as fast as possible? To me, this is what makes a champion. And odds are, if this person has all of these characteristics, most likely they will end up on the top of the podium. Not always,
Yeah,
but I think building a good person comes before building a good athlete. Um,
absolutely.
so I know we're getting a little bit tight on time because we have some great questions that we want to answer today. So I'm going to give this next question in two parts. It's kind of a big question. And I use this, I am, I don't know if this is the right word to use or not, but did you ever go through a phase of your career where you felt super low, even depressed? And also, part two of this question is, did you ever speak to a psychologist or sports psychologist?
So, like I said, I think 70% of my career was failure. So I had plenty of moments where I felt low and unmotivated to go back to the gym and train more. Okay. But I think one, that was, how can I say this? It's every time I would crash a competition, I would be very, 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 very low at that point in time. Okay. I would be very unmotivated. But then the first day that I was on the gym, I only wanted to train more and more and more so that would not happen again. It's kind of contradictory in some point because obviously no one wants to crash, no one wants to fail, but failure was always like a fuel for me. Failure always made me train harder. Even today when I fail, I on the stuff that I do, I always have this extra motivation to do things even better. I don't want to fail. No one wants to fail, but that's how it was to me. But yes, there were moments that were extremely low. I can tell you, I believe 2007. When did we have that World Cup in Lake Placid? 2007.
Yeah,
I think it was
2007.
2007, right? We came from Canada 2007. We did the World Cup. We did on the second World Cup in Lake Placid, and
No, it was
then
the opposite. We did Lake
was it
Placid
the
first
opposite?
and then Montreal. Yeah,
Okay,
or
so
Quebec.
yeah, 2002 was the opposite. 2002 was Edmonton, and then North Carolina, Greensboro. So 2007, I went to Lake Placid and I crashed, and that was a series of competition, always failing. I can tell you, I really was down at that point in time. I really was, and I just completely collapsed in tears in the competition stage, on a corner there with my coach. But it's just, there was no way I could contain myself after all these number of competition, always failing and training so well. I was training so well, and I always had this belief in me: if you train really good, then eventually you will succeed on the competition as well, right? I always believed in this. And then at that point in time, it was definitely not showing that. It was exactly being the opposite. I was training so well, so well, so well, and then we get to the competition and crash and crash and crash, and I'm like, it that was one of the lowest points in my career. If I had to find the place, I will never forget that season. That was terrible. That was really bad. And but it just, I think that's what coaches are really helpful at those points in time. They're very helpful at other points in time, but those points in time, coaches can be very uh, phenomenal and very important, because they get you out of that hole that you dig for yourself, and they bring you up to the point where you just go, okay, and I'm going to go home and I'll do even better, and I'm going to go home and I'm going to train 3 times harder, and I'll do things 5 times better and everything. So, and that in the end, that's it, what happened. You get really low when you fail, but then 2 or 3 days later, you're just like boosting yourself, saying, I'm going to go and I'm going to do even better. Okay. And that happened several times in my career. Now, were there other moments that, I don't know, maybe times of the season that was not very competitive, there was not a lot of competitions, that my motivation was lower and I didn't really feel like training? Yes, there was also that. Probably like every year, whenever we have periods that we don't have a lot of competition, you just go, "Ooh, I really don't feel like coming to the gym today," and all that. And I think that's what makes a difference between an exceptional athlete and an average athlete, is that exceptional athletes, they might think this, but they still go to the gym every day and they still do what is you're supposed to do, no matter how motivated they are. It's simple as that. There are times that I did not want to go to the gym, not even want to get out of bed. There are times I would just prefer to play video games in bed or watch a show in bed all day. But it gets to a point that, nope, time for the gym. Same as school. Let's go. We do not miss school. We do not miss gym. Let's go. Boom. And that's life.
So what about the second part of the question? Did you ever
So the second
see?
part, yes. So I did, but not for the unmotivational part of my sport, not for the moments of depression, if you want to call it that way, which I never consider myself depressed, but not for those moments. I saw a psychologist for the preparation of the Olympic Games mainly. So I don't remember how far before I started, but maybe actually wait, I can think, because 2003 Worlds, I was already being supported with that psychologist. So obviously, probably about a year before the Olympic Games. A year out, I started working with psychology and understanding the routines of the competition that were productive for me, the routines of the competition that was not productive for me. For example, I always found that it was not productive for me to watch other people compete. It was simply not, especially, and there were some people more than others, right? You would see that person compete, and it didn't even matter if those athletes would do well or bad. Actually, if they would do bad, probably I would make more mistakes, because it would become just easy for me to just finish my routine and win. And that would be the moments that I would make even more mistakes. So it was just simply not productive at all for me to watch other people compete or to watch their scores, period. So that was something that we found out. So if looking back right now, if you see videos of myself and everything, when people are jumping, I'm just facing the other way. It's simple as that. I never really see anyone compete at the Olympic Games except in video afterward. I never saw at that point in time. It's the way it is. So that was a lot of things we worked on. We, to be a little bit more specific, we would go on to this room, we would work with the breathing, we would try to pretend that I was going to do a routine right now with no warm up, just using the breathing to activate my muscles in a way that I feel ready to perform a routine right now. Or the opposite, try to put myself in a position that I felt really, really nervous, or think about something that I felt really, and try to relax and calm down and bring me back to my normal state, right? The things that I spoke in the beginning with the breathing, that was mainly what we worked on. And I guess the results speak for themselves, but I got to the Olympic Games and I was very successful there, and the competition was extremely good. So I would say that's something that works. And I try teach my athletes some of it. It's pretty hard because sometimes our athletes don't listen to us in that uh, about these things. They believe in us about technique and all these things, but then when it comes to the mental preparation, we tell them certain things and they don't. They always like suspicious. I'm not sure. I'm like, okay,
I
everyone
think
has to find their own way on those things. They need to observe their body, feel their body, and see, okay, this was good. Let's continue. This was not good. Let's push it to the side. Right? Everyone needs to go through those things a little bit.
I think a lot of the one that I get is they're like, yeah, well, you're an Olympian, you know, and I'm like, do you think I was born that way? You don't think I went through hardships and that as well? You know, they think that we just are born this way and that we were lucky that we were, and I think to some extent we are blessed, you know, but um, you know, that doesn't mean that it was easy for anyone by any means, you know.
We weren't born this way for sure, and we had to train a lot to get to the stage that we were and that we are, right? So I get the same thing. Oh, you can do that, but you're amazing. You went to the Olympic Games. I'm like, yeah, but if you would have seen me with 12 and 13 years old, you would have never thought I would make it to the Olympic Games. I was doing it 3 quarters back with my head touching my butt. That's how bad it was. So yeah, and no one believed me. So you know what? I had to work a lot to get where I was. So
um
should we start with
so,
a new segment with the
so let
questions?
me I want to share really quick the a story that a phase that I went through
Okay, yeah.
when I was younger. I when I was out of somewhere between around 17 or 18 years old, I started to experience these lows just spread out through months and months at a time. And looking back, I think a lot of it is I had a lot of success as a junior, and I think it's kind of how it is nowadays too. These kids are learning skills so early; they're setting these new difficulty records for themselves so early. It's like and then eventually you get to a point where those new skills that you're learning are spaced out a lot, and your records, you're not beating them every month anymore. Maybe it's 2 or 3 times a year, and you go from these highs, these extreme highs, and you know, such excitement of learning this skill and getting this new routine, and then suddenly they slow down and you're just getting in the gym and getting your butt kicked with 5 routines, you know, 10 routines, and it's like, what am I even doing here? And then you start overthinking, and then you're scared of this skill, and it's like, and then day after day you keep, like you said, you get yourself up, you go to the gym and you get your butt kicked, and it's like there's no more highs. It's just I'm coming in for weeks and weeks at a time, and it's just
Yep.
lows, and you know, and I'm getting my butt kicked physically and mentally, and you know, I think that's something that at some point everyone's going to go through, because it's not the learning curve is not linear, you know. It doesn't just keep going straight up, you know. It's more of an exponential curve where it's like you learn the you know, fundamentals and the foundation, then you start to learn a lot of skills, and then it tapers off. And when
Yep.
it starts to taper off, it's like, what the heck is going on here? I was so good 2 years ago, why am I no longer that good? And that kind of threw me for a loop. And I think that's, and I wanted to quit, and I really wanted to quit. And it scares me to think that what would happen, where would my life be right now had I quit when I was 17 or 18 years old. And I just, if there's some athletes listening that are, you know, at that age, you know, you're going to go through that. And I beg of you that you keep pushing, because on the other side of those really rough, whether it's 6 months or 1 year or 3 years, you know, it's so worth it. You know, it's so worth it. And
So
yeah.
I'm glad you touched on that because that obviously that happens with everyone. Okay, it also happened to me. Okay, it happens to everyone. Uh, but some people more than others are really addicted to new skills because that adrenaline that it gives them when they're learning a new skill is like it's phenomenal, right? You felt it, I felt it, everyone feels it, right? But they go up, like you said, a lot of new skills, a lot of new skills, a lot of new skills, and then there is no more crazy new skills that you keep doing like on a consistent period. Of course, you can always learn new skills. No, there's no doubt. Especially if you have a super tramp, you can even learn more. But you get to a point that you start tapering, like just like you said. Now that's where you really see the athlete there, because until then you're just seeing that excitement, you're just seeing that addiction to the adrenaline of doing the new skills. It's really hard. That's every time some parents come to me in the gym and say, oh, my children, they love this, they go home, they do this and this and this, and I'm like, I wish they wouldn't, because I would prefer the the love hate has such a fine line. Okay, they go from love to I don't want to do any more of these sports so fast, that I would just prefer these athletes to just be in the middle, just take it like they take school. Okay, they go and they make it part of their schedule, and they go to the gym every day, no matter if it's good or if it's bad, because then the success will show up any day. Now, if it's like, oh, I love it, 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 one thing went wrong, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, and they will just eventually quit, and that's not what we want.
And I think we see a lot of that, at least in the United States, is, especially with so many school sports and other
Yes.
options that we have in the United States. It's like the very day that athlete says, I don't love this anymore, that wasn't fun, the parents take them out and switch them. And that's not fair to me to say about all parents, but
No,
I would
no,
say
not
it's a
all.
majority of
Everyone is
families in the
different.
United
Everyone is
States.
different, but we do see these being more standardized here. I think it's very regular to see that happening.
Yes. Um, And before we answer the questions, before we go to the questions, I did see a sports psychologist. It was about 1 year out before the London Olympic Games, and I wish I had that resource. It was only supplied 1 year out from the Olympic Games. I wish I had it my whole life. I wish I had the funds to afford one as well. Um,
Yeah.
all right, so let's get to some Q&A. We have some questions, a fair amount of questions.
Okay, maybe you should read the questions then, or I can
All
read
right,
some. It's fine.
all right, all right. So Double Mini Tramp World on Instagram asked, if the Olympics get more quota spots, which discipline should go in first? So mind
So
you, Nuno, these questions can open up a can of worms, and these questions can also lead us on an hour-long discussion. So let's try to keep these to like a minute or 2 minutes each, because we got a few of them.
let's be fast. Yes, let's be fast. So first of all, the FIG does not decide on the quota places. The IOC does. That's point number one. And I did see the answers that other people had to these questions, and they all talked about tumbling and double mean. No one talked anything about synchro. So
There was
in
a
my
couple. There was like
opinion,
two or three.
or there was, okay. So in my opinion, synchro should probably go in first. And now after synchro, double mini, or tumbling, I don't think it's my place to say which one should go in first, but this is my opinion that I have about these two disciplines. These are extremely hard disciplines as well. No one is taking any how do you say, any relevance out of this discipline. No one says that they work less than anyone. No, I don't say that. I did double mini. I was world champion on double mini. I love double mini. Now, facts only. Throughout the world, double mini has more participants. In the United States, tumbling is probably stronger than double mini. So this is something that we see. We see if you see
I
tumbling,
don't know if
you
I
go
would
to
say that. I think the USA Double Mini is probably the strongest team for the
it. No, no,
past
no.
10
Yes, but
years.
in the number of athletes. I'm talking only in
Okay.
the number of participants. I'm not talking about the quality of the athletes. I'm talking in the number of participants only. Throughout the world, tumbling does not have that many participants. I believe United States and Russia are those that have the most number on tumbling. Okay, double mini, they're spread out through a lot of other countries. You have Argentina, you have a lot of other countries that have double mini that they don't even participate in tumbling, most of them. So I think what people need to realize is that for the IOC to give any quota places, they need to take out of other disciplines. That's point number one, because there is a limited number of Olympic athletes, and that number was just changed. I think right now
it's like a little over
text
5,000,
says
right?
no 11,000. So, but I think the
11,000.
text says around 11,000. So
Are you
previously
talking
it
about
said
coaches
11,000.
as well? I
No,
think
just
that
athletes. I think just
I
athletes.
okay.
We'll verify that, but I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure it's 11,000. I believe the text was just changed to around 11,000 to allow some disciplines to go in, right? But so they can't really increase that number. That number is set more or less, and they have to take out from one place to give to the other. That's point number one. So who's want to give their Olympic spots for other disciplines to go in? It's extremely hard. No sport wants to go out of the Olympic Games, right? So that's point number one. And then if they have to choose a sport to go in, it comes with the popularity. It comes with how many countries actually participate in these sports. Right now, and you guys are more than welcome to go look at start list. We are having trouble filling World Cups in tumbling and double mini. Okay, tumbling, we have World Cups with 5 athletes. So
At the World Cup.
how World Cups with 5 athletes. So how can we ask for something if the countries are not partaking their athletes to the World Cups? You know, if you want to be pushed into the Olympic Games, push your countries to participate in these World Cups. And I know double mini only started this year. There were some World Cups that were good, like the one Valladolid had plenty of people participated. But then the one in Russia did not have that many people participating. So and yes, you can always argument, but if this was an Olympic discipline, we would have more. I'm not going to deny that. That is true. If it was an Olympic discipline, we would have more. But that's not the way it works. You
But
need to
that's
have
not what happened. That's not what happened with trampoline. But how was trampoline's participation at the 1996, 1994, 1992 World Championships? Right? They were very well participated. There
correct.
was tons
Correct.
of tons of athletes.
Did we gain after we were at the Olympic Games? Yes, we did. But we already had a huge number of countries participating before we were even selected for the Olympic Games. And I think people need to take this into account. It's not just, oh, FIG doesn't want or the IOC doesn't want. There's a lot of conditionings in this process that need to be taken into consideration. So would I love to see double mini, tumbling, synchro, and trampoline individual at the Olympic Games? I would love to see. I hope that I'm still alive to one day be able to see that. But I'm not sure. I'm simply not sure. There are other disciplines that want to go in as well. Acro sports want to go in as well, right? Everyone wants to be at the Olympic Games.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll see.
And I think going from, at least I'm not sure in other countries, but in the United States, diving is very popular, even on years that we don't have a successful diver. Um, and one of the things that people love to see is the synchronized diving, right? So this is
Yeah.
something that already catches the eye of people that have already, seen this and enjoyed this. So it's like that, but a little bit more. All right, so let's go to our next question. I'm going to combine these two. So this is a question between Double Mini Tramp World again on Instagram, and then Paula Martins. Um, so Double Mini Tramp World says, should there be a Worlds every year, even on Olympic years? And then Paula Martin said, on Olympic years, okay, maybe not World Championships, but what about World Age Groups?
Okay, so my opinion is that it should be every year, even in on Olympic years. Okay, I feel bad for double mini and tumbling that do not have Olympic Games and they don't have any major competition that year. Okay, doesn't make sense to me. If Olympic Games are around July and August, there's plenty of time to prepare for a Worlds in November, like we have, right? For me, we should have Worlds and WAGs every year. That's just for me. I think many countries base their development on those competitions, so we should have them every year. We already have 3 years out of the four, no doubt, but I would add it for the fourth year. I know there are
Do you think their
I know
argument
UEG. Yeah,
do
go
you think
go.
do you think their argument is that it's too much for the FIG to handle that a large event like the Olympic Games and the World Championships every year? Or do you think that they're trying to keep the tradition? So for those of you that or those that are just become a senior over the past 10 years, they don't know that World Championships used to be every other year, and kind of to keep I don't know why, whether it's to make it more what's the word that I'm looking for? uh More difficult to become a world champion, right? Or there's less world champions. Maybe that's an argument that they're thinking
I
of.
do not know. I really do not know what the argument is. I'll be honest. I know in the past trampoline had some problems, and we still do in finding organizers. I'm not going to deny that. It's not so easy to organize a world championship. Okay, but I think we should be doing the best we can to organize them, and I think we should try and have it every year. I really think so.
And
I
to be to for their sake, we have world championships the same year as world games, right?
correct.
So world games and Olympic games are not necessarily the same size event, but they're pretty relatively close
They're
in size of their
they're
caliber with,
comparable, I would say. Yeah.
yeah. And the FIG is capable of having those athletes. I'd be really interested, now that we say this, to go back and look at the attendance at the World Championships the same year as the World Games on double mini and tumbling.
Yeah, that's something. And but even the attendance changes when we have a world championships qualifying for the Olympic Games, and we have other two that don't qualify for the Olympic Games. The attendance changes a little bit. So, and I think that the new all around competition came and revived world championships a little bit more. So, I if it was my decision, or if someone would ask for my opinion, I would have world championships every year and WAGs as well. So
Yeah,
that would
I
be.
I definitely think that WAGs should be included. I don't know necessarily how I feel about World Championships every year. I think it's good to have a year off to kind of use that time for yourself, to take a month or two off of from the sport, or to heal, an old injury, or um just to take that time. I think with athletes competing world championships every single year, kind of like we see at athletes in world age groups every single year, I feel like it's easier to burn out. I think that one year gives them a
That
healthy
is
break.
that is true. I'm not going to deny that. That is also true. But if I was an athlete, I would prefer it every year. I think you can find time to rest after that world championship, or even before. I think that it's possible to do both. Now there is no doubt, and I did it as well. After you come out of an Olympic Games, you really want to have that rest, and feel like you deserve to rest a little bit longer than normal, because you achieve like that huge milestone on your career, right? So I understand. But for those that do not have the Olympic Games, it's just another year, and every year needs to have a big goal. I think if they go to the year that there is no big goal, then it's just not the same. I feel like it's just not the same, and especially at the developmental stage, especially for WAGs, I feel like that they need that competition every year for WAGs, so they can have a goal every year. Just
But then
it's just
also, I mean,
personal opinion.
playing devil's advocate, this also gives opportunity to maybe some countries to host a competition that wouldn't have the opportunity to host a competition maybe in the spring, because of competition with other well-known competitions like Lule Cup or Flower Cup. This might give them an opportunity to host a competition in the fall.
But yes, but they already host those competitions anyway, WAGs year or not. So, but you're right. It could
No, I'm
be a
saying
year.
I'm
It could be
saying
a year.
it's an opportunity for other countries. Let's say like Mexico or Canada or United States, who doesn't
Hmm.
host a competition. Whereas if we put a competition maybe near Flower Cup, those people would still go to Flower Cup. Maybe we don't have that opportunity,
Yes,
or there's too much
but
competition.
for example, I can tell you that, yeah, UEG tried to organize a WAGs on the Olympic year, and I think that was a great proposal that they had. I don't think it was accepted, but I think it was a good proposal that they had. the what bothered me with that proposal is that was just for European Union, everyone else would be excluded. So we would be
Oh,
excluded. So we could not participate. But again, I wish we could have participated because I think it's good for our athletes to have something. I guess this year we would have had in the Pacifics, that would not be bad. That was also a goal that we could take in our athletes to in the Pacific. So that's good.
yeah,
Like I said, I think it's good for every year to have one goal, but I don't disagree. I think having one year where the end of the year can be more dedicated to training camps with other teams or even national training camps, and we're not so pressured to do everything in the beginning of the year, I think it also helps. So I know the year does not allow to do everything, so
yeah.
it's tough.
There was sorry to jump back, but there was a statistic that I just remembered that someone had told me that going back to the quota places in the Olympic Games, and you're going back to your point of participation, it was either 2013, 14, or 15 that if you add up men's double mini, women's double mini, men's tumbling, and women's tumbling, there was less participation than in men's trampoline alone. If you added up all the genders for tumbling and double mini, it was still less people than men's trampoline, not men and women's trampoline, just men's trampoline alone. So I think that just goes to speak volume on participation. All right, so our
Next question.
our next question comes from Gary Halftech. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. He says, "Do you think they should postpone the new code of points until 2022?"
Ooh. Okay, so personal opinion only. Again, I do think that everything should be postponed to 2022. That's personal opinion for sure, and I think everyone is in agreement with this that the Olympic Games should be done under the current code of points and not the new code of points. I think everyone can agree with that one. I think that one is an easy one. Now the question is, and most likely, I don't think it's decided yet, but it seems at this point in time that we will have Olympic Games in August and we will still have World Championships and WAGs in November. And the question is, will that have the new code of points or will that be delayed to 2022? And I can tell it's not decided yet. That's all I know. But personal opinion only, I think it should be delayed to 2022. I think it just becomes a logistical nightmare to prepare the judges for half a year on one code of points and the second half of the year in a different code of points.
Plus
Simple as that.
the athletes are going to be training compulsory routines for 6 months, and then only
But
optionals,
I
or if
think
they're
the
going to do
athletes,
2 optionals.
yes, but I think the athletes could adapt. I think the athletes could adapt because in the end, what are you doing? What are you doing with your training? You remove a compulsory, right? And you might use some skills that you have on that compulsory to put on your optional, but you're not going to use a lot of them. I'd use 1 or 2. That's what I would say. I'm
Man,
not sure, obviously.
I can't imagine just thinking about being an athlete, what those trainings are going to look like. It's not like, okay, at least I have 5 compulsories today, I have some turns. It's like every turn you get up, it's going to be optional. Oh
I
man,
feel
thank
bad for
God we
them
got
now.
out. We got out at the right time.
No, I'm sorry, Steven. I don't disagree. I don't agree with you in that one. I would love to compete under this new system, and that's something for us to discuss on the next episode. But I would love to compete on this new system. I
Well,
think this new system
competing
is
is
going to be.
one thing. I think it's also great to compete. I'm talking about training, doing 20 to 30 turns of only optional, all optional every single day. Granted,
But
obviously there will be some
I don't
basics
know.
and stuff like that, but
I think you'll realize. I don't think any of us really had time to think about how training would be under this new system. That's what I think. Okay, because we haven't started living it. But if you think a little bit, I think you still will have some technical turns. You might even have not a compulsory, but an easier routine that you do just for technique with some multiple skills and some
right.
simple skills,
Swing time, Ross drill,
swing
something like
times,
this.
all those things. Yes, and then you really so your training maybe it won't change that much. For sure, it will have more turns of optional routine. I think so as well, and more different connections because you have probably more than one routine as well. But I don't know. I don't think it's going to be like, okay, 10 turns, let's go, 10 optionals.
Who knows? It might be. But you know what also, I mean, also, how much fun was it when on those days that you were jumping high and that you beat your compulsory record and you're just like flying through the air? That was some of the best days of training. And
It
you
can
know,
still
that
be a
might,
thing. It only depends
yes,
on how
but
you do it in your gym. It can still be a thing.
yeah, it can. If you have a, I don't know if people will be training routines per
Yes, I don't
se,
know either.
you know,
That's
and
something for the next episode.
yeah. All
Let's
right.
not say
So
everything
let's go to
we want.
our last and final
Well,
question.
I think you skipped the question. You skipped one. The first one, Paul Martins asking what will happen with the European Championships. Should they take place next year?
Oh, okay. So that's, yeah, the same thing as World Championships on the Olympic year. Should the European Championships also take place from Paulo Martin?
So I think they should take place. I think that year should be just like the conversation we had with Rosie on the previous episode, on episode 3. Try to do that year as close to possible to what this year, what 2020 would have been, and that would be including European Championships, just like they were, and European Championships. And I know that Europe is already qualified on men and women, so they really don't count anything at this point for the Olympic qualification, but it still would be something that could count if there was no Europe qualified. So I think they should still happen. That's just my opinion. Again, I hope everyone understand that this is just our personal opinions that we're talking here.
Gotcha.
And
All right.
I've
Yeah.
done plenty of European championships. I would hate to miss one. I think it's always a great competition. Okay, let's go to the last question.
All right. Last question from Tom Hamlin. With the postponement of the Olympic Games, in your opinion, how would it affect the fan base? So I'm not sure if he means the actual fans showing up to the arena in the competition, or if he's talking about the fan base of people watching at home or live streaming. What do you
So
think?
I thought it was the second one. When I read it, I interpreted it as the second one, and even the fan base, that that boom that the clubs get after the Olympic Games, the fans that just see Olympic Games and then they look for more for gymnastics class. So I I think all of it will just be delayed. So this year we won't see any of it. I think people already forgot about the Olympic Games. People, when I say people, I'm talking about the audiences that were not connected to a sport. They already forgot about the Olympic Games. Okay, shifted 1 year, moving on. Let's see you guys next year. So everything is already. But I think next year we'll have exactly the same boom as we should have had this year, in all stages. I don't think. Well, that's the hard part. I'm not sure how many people will feel safe to go and watch the Olympic Games. That part might be affected a little bit, I think. But the rest, I think the rest will probably be exactly the same as it would have been before. That's, again, just my personal opinion.
I think that the same thing you said will happen. The people will come, the boom will come to the gyms and to the different sports just 1 year later. I think once this pandemic is over, I feel like people are going to put it behind them. And in fact, that boom that we see at the Olympics might be even bigger. I know that me living so close to Manhattan, after 9/11 happened, the New York Yankees kind of brought the city back together, that had fallen to pieces. And I think the Olympic Games might do something similar next year, where the whole world has been shut down and gone through this craziness that we have never seen in our world before, and then boom, it brings us all back together again. And I think that the fan base might jump up even more than what it normally would be.
Than regular. It's possible. It's possible.
Yeah.
It's really possible.
All right, guys, that's a wrap on episode 4. Thanks for listening in. Just remember to please subscribe, like us, rate and review us. It helps a lot. Also, send us some questions. We love to answer them. Maybe sometimes we'll even make a whole episode dedicated to some of these topics. You can also leave us a voice note or ask us a question via voice message. You can follow the link to the voice message on all platforms. Just try to remember to keep it to 90 seconds or less so we can play it on the podcast and answer your question. You can also reach us and follow us on Twitter at Tramp Insight, on Instagram at Trampoline Insight. You can email us, trampolineinsight@gmail.com, or you can like us and message us on Facebook at Trampoline Insight. Thank you very much, you guys, and we look forward to providing you guys with some fun, exciting topics. So let us know what you want to hear and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, guys. See you next time.